welcome to the second episode of the LNUR Line podcast, a podcast for LEGO Train fans. This week we're talking about LEGO Train power systems, and we've got a couple of members here to help us discuss that. We've also got an interview with a previous contestant from the LEGO Masters UK show as well. So with us today we have Jonathan Evans.
Good evening.
We have Trace Pierce, our American member.
Howdy, guys.
Very American, excellent. So we have Louis Byrd, who we'll be interviewing later.
Hello.
Andrew Harvey.
Hi, guys.
And McGuinness.
Hello.
And Mr. Miller.
Hello, everyone.
Can't resist doing stupid voice.
Solid.
This is my
Okay,
normal
so-
voice. How dare you?
We're going to be moving on. First up is our interview with Louis Byrd, who was on LEGO Masters UK in the second series. Hello, Louis.
Hello.
So, Louis, you appeared in Series 2 of LEGO Masters here in the UK. How did you get onto the show? What was the process for joining?
Yeah, well, there was about 3 weeks worth of audition stages to actually even get onto the programme. It was held, I think, over the course of about 2 months.
Was it LEGO building challenges, or was it more, were you going to appear on the TV?
There were two live auditions, about six actual phone interviews, video interviews, that sort of thing. There was a speed build challenge and a creativity build challenge.
What did you have to build for those, or is that top secret?
I don't think so. There was a LEGO creator set, which was a case of how quickly can you build. And then for the other, it was build something significant to you. So they really left it completely open.
What did you build in that section? Was it a train?
No, I wasn't. It was actually LEGO Masters that got me back into the railways. I was out of it by that point.
Oh, right, okay.
No, it was. We basically had a few boxes with every colour imaginable. And so instead of doing something personal to us, we did something that utilised all the colours. So we did a lighthouse. And somehow got away with it.
What was the most challenging task you had to complete for LEGO Masters?
So for each episode, there was a planned challenge and an unplanned challenge. And so the most difficult challenge for me was we entered the build room one morning and Johnny Vegas was sat in the middle of the room. And we got told that we had 3 hours to build his face. So with no prior... I mean, I don't build organic things, so...
I think they can be quite difficult in LEGO.
Yeah, and...
Especially at smaller scales, but...
Well,
Okay.
it was life size, which wasn't too bad.
Was that the favourite model you built, the hardest one, or did you have a particular favourite from the series?
Oh, I would have to say... I mean, I know it's the cop-out answer, but I loved our final build. The 1930s beach scene.
Yeah, that was really great. That was probably
I think
a fan
it was
favourite of the series.
the opportunity to build something that had never been done before the working mutoscope. It's just a shame that they got broken up at the end of it. We never got to see it again.
Didn't get to take it
No.
home with you.
No, all the parts just get put into next year's prize, not prize pool, brick pool. Yeah, and then we never saw a third series.
So, you get recognised in the street from shows or at LEGO conventions, LEGO exhibitions, or
Particularly at LEGO events, it's when you would least expect it. I've been caught on the train going to uni open days, just out shopping with friends. It's just a night. Well, it's nice sometimes. The LEGO shop is a particular no-go zone, to be fair.
have to get your supplies from somewhere else then? Still keep in touch with any of the other competitors from the series, or have you all...
Yeah, we're all on a group chat. There was a chat set up for actually when we're filming, and it's lingered on afterwards, and you don't hear from people for months, and then all of a sudden you get back in touch, and it brings it all back.
Do you have any particular favourites from the group?
Ooh. I think I don't think any of them will be listening. I think Tom and Nathan were a particular favourite team. I think for me, it was
Yeah,
weird
we're going to
meeting.
make sure. We're going to make sure that a copy of the podcast gets sent to them now.
Oh, of
All the
course.
others.
But no, I think for me it was bizarre meeting someone the same age as me that was interested in Lego, because I don't think that had ever happened before. So
I think that's what's quite nice about the Lego fan community and the adult Lego fan community. It's you still find people now who you think don't expect them to be into Lego, but they are, and they've got a huge collection at home. But maybe it's a bit they
yeah,
kind of don't mention it.
and that was my first experience with the fan community. I wasn't part of a user group or anything before then. I'd only been to one show, not displaying, just exhibiting, so I really hadn't met anyone up until then.
Definitely, there's a lot of us worldwide. I think it's quite a good community.
Definitely.
So we mentioned you're a reasonably new member. I was actually trying to look back in our almost non-existent records to see when you joined LNUR. I think it was some point. Was that last year at Calder Valley show
That
in
sounds
West
about
Yorkshire?
right. I
Yeah.
put off applying for ages.
Yes, because we talked a couple of times. You weren't quite convinced.
No, I think the first time I actually met you was Calder Valley 2019, which was my first Lego show. But by that point, I hadn't actually finished designing any railway stuff. It wasn't until the back end of last year that I got back into it.
Now we can't stop you. You post loads of stuff in the group chat. Really great models. So what is it about Lego trains that you love? What is it about designing them and building them that really consumes you?
I've always been into railways. I took a bit of a break in interest for quite a while, particularly when I was in high school, and so it was just a combination of coming back into being interested in them and finding that actually I'm not too bad at designing them. So up until a point I was terrible. I mean, even now I've still got a load of unfinished builds, but there's something about recreating real-world scale models to me that I just love.
Yeah, I think that's an appeal for quite a lot of members, and something that moves as well. So it's not just a house
yeah.
or a shop or something like that. It's something that actually moves, and that's what we as adult fans like, I think. But it's also really popular with the kids at Lego shows that come and look at our displays. Like seeing the trains going round and round, and it doesn't really matter whether that's Thomas the Tank Engine going round or it's something else that one of our members have built.
Yeah.
It's the
there was
movement.
A universal appeal for both.
Oh yeah, definitely. Trains and Lego are a great mix.
Yeah.
You collect any other Lego themes, or are you mostly focused on building your own custom models now?
I used to a lot more than I do now, and I think that's mostly just down to how much space I've physically got, and also keeping a cap on spending as well. So I'm a big fan of, like, the Creative Expert was a personal favourite for a while.
Some great sets in that line, yeah.
There's a lot of good stuff coming up through Lego Ideas.
Yes, there is, and that more and more sets seem to be as we were discussing in the last podcast, more and more things seem to be getting through to the 10K Lego review. So there's more and more variety and choice of what's getting picked, and it's not necessarily all just IP stuff, which me personally is not really the side of Lego I like.
No.
What have you been building most recently?
For the last few weeks, I've been pretty much 100% set on my P2 locomotive. Mostly just getting the mechanics down to it. I've never designed a tender engine before, let alone built one in person, so it's been interesting. I think today's the first day I've actually had it running consistently.
Oh, excellent. Progressing well then.
Yeah.
Do you have any Lego train sets that you sort of collect, or are you not too interested in the set? Have a favourite?
I've picked up two recently, actually, which were just quite cheap online. It was two of the can't think of the set numbers now. It's two of the city passenger trains, which I
That
thought were
latest blue and yellow.
it's not. No, the two of the older ones. There's a red one and a white one. It's the white bullet train.
Oh yeah, I'm
And
sure. I'm sure Matt can dig out some suitable
someone will
images
know.
when he comes to edit
Yeah.
this for us.
And I mainly got them for parts packs, to be honest, for motors and things. But now that I've built them, because if I buy something for parts, I'll always build it first, because otherwise I don't think you're getting the full money's worth. So I've built them, and actually I don't mind them. I might expand them at some point.
They're good. They're good fun, and I think they're a good way of getting kids into trains as well.
Yeah, and the only train set I got as a kid growing up was I did get the Emerald Knight, which was a prized possession for many years.
That's still in one piece because I know a lot of our members have taken it apart.
It
to use
wasn't.
the parts elsewhere.
It wasn't. I got quite frustrated with it because it kept jamming.
Yeah, it's a common
8-year-old,
problem.
8-year-old me, so broke it up and turned it into something else. But then it has been restored to its former glory.
Mine's in a box somewhere, and because it doesn't run very well, it rarely comes out now.
No, mine's just static. But yeah, it's got its faults, but I think it's nostalgia that's hanging on for me.
I think that's it. It was one that I managed to miss it when it came out, and I ended up going back to buy it from eBay. I think I got it for a reasonable price still, and
Yeah.
I'm glad I got it because it's
an icon. I think it's
quite an iconic set, and I'm glad I bought it. But at the same time, it doesn't get use on my layout these days. Might need a display case or something.
yeah.
I think as a final question, what would you advise Lego fans who may be looking to get into designing their own Lego locomotives and wagons and rolling stocks? Do you have any advice for newcomers to the hobby?
Just go for it. I mean, I spent probably a few months between thinking about joining and actually designing a locomotive, just looking at what other people had done, taking bits of inspiration from there's loads of different sites out there. Websites, YouTube channels, Facebook pages, books. Just go for what you want to do. It doesn't have to be something real, it doesn't have to be fantastic, it doesn't have to be motorised. Just start somewhere and see where it goes.
Yeah, but I think that's the key. It can maybe feel a bit overwhelming.
Yeah,
to start on a big locomotive.
I mean, I am even now. When I started the P2, I just looked at some of the examples out there, and even I thought, where do I start with this? But
yeah, the running gear. This is why diesel locomotives are easier because you don't have to deal with running gear usually.
yeah, I've done one diesel actually. I think I'm one of the strange people that admires both.
Yeah, I quite like both, but I think my diesel is probably where my heart's at. Or more modern era stuff, definitely. Okay, well, thanks, Louis, for taking some time to talk to us, and if you'll hang around for a little bit. I know you've got to shoot off soon.
Yeah, I'll hang around for a bit.
But we're going to go into discussing some Lego train power systems from the very early systems to up, which is the latest Lego system. They do love to change their power systems every now and again and upset us who are rail fans, don't they? Yes. So it does, and it keeps our bank balances very empty. Okay, so thanks, Louis. So in this episode, we're going to talk about various Lego power systems for trains, and first up, in order of age, I suppose, is Jonathan Evans talking about the 4.5 volt and the 12 volt Lego train system.
Many thanks, Richard. Welcome to the vintage section and a bit of history about where Lego trains started. Lego started their journey with trains in the late 1960s with both push-along 4.5 volt and 12 volt systems. Due to the costs and availability of the motorised versions, the 4.5 volt systems were more popular in the 60s and 70s. The early 4.5 volt systems worked with a motor unit connected to a battery box. The motor unit had interchangeable wheels so that it could act as a train, a vehicle, or part of a bigger machine or mechanism. The battery box later upgraded to a bespoke tender which takes 3 size C batteries. The 4.5 volt system continued right the way through to the 1980s grey area, although its popularity in this decade waned due to the availability of the 12 volt grey system. The 4.5 volt system came with a couple of accessories, which are a signal which stopped the motor with a special bar between the tracks that broke the electrical circuit in the battery box tender underneath. A direction change post which sat on one of the sleepers, which switched the lever on the side of the battery box, which reversed the polarity, therefore the direction of the motor. And in the 70s there was actually a whistle and microphone box which actually changed direction as well. Nothing like this has been seen before, and I doubt very much we'll see it again, but it was quite cool. The 12 volt system also originated in the late 1960s. However, due to cost and availability, it was only really available within Western Europe. 12 volt really got into high gear with the revamp in the 1980s when we moved into what fans call the grey era. The 12 volt system uses a central rail to transmit the power to the motor from a power pack. The voltage and therefore speed can be varied by the user. The early 12 volt blue system had little in the way of track accessories. In the grey era, the range of track accessories increased exponentially. These included remote control points, remote signalling with a bit of isolation track, remote control level crossing, and a remote decoupling system, although this was somewhat unreliable. The 12 volt motors are quite robust, however have 2 weak points. The contacts for the central power rails wear out over time, and the graphic blocks deep within the motor that sit on the armature also wear out. Being sealed units, servicing is somewhat difficult. The grey era continued till approximately 1990 when LEGO introduced the new 9 volt system, and this will be discussed shortly.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. That was a good overview, and going in with the roundtable discussion as well. Next up, we have the 9 volt power system, and it's our very own podcast producer Matt Dawson speaking of that.
Okay, so 9 volt launched after 12 volt in 1991, and is probably the most common power system you'd see outside of the modern power functions and powered up systems you'd see on exhibitions. 9 volt is the last system for LEGO to use track power, the first being 12 volt, and is the closest you'll get to a model railway track system, because on 12 volt you actually have a separate electric rail in the centre that actually gives the power, whereas 9 volt actually uses power on the rails itself, and that introduced a brand new motor which, although has changed now to use Technic axles, is still the very similar shape you'd see today in modern systems. And 9 volt continued all the way from 91 up through the changeover from town to city in other LEGO lines, until the 2000s when it was announced that the tamping machine that actually tamped the metal onto the track panels had actually broke. So I think they did a small repair, completed their production run, and then that was the end of 9 volt, unfortunately.
Yep, very sad times for a lot of LEGO train fans there. Next, we have the remote control era train. I think there was only one train set for this, and Chris Miller's going to walk us through that.
That's where you're wrong.
I'm off.
There's actually 2 RC sets, 1 freight, 1 passenger. Launched in 2006, it was the end of the trains as a separate theme. It was part of the city theme. It was launch of the plastic track, which we still use to this day. It came with brand new electronics, including sound. Sound was there, over the top of people going, "Oh no, what is this awful RC train with the awful battery in its baseplate?" And that's about it.
Which brings us really nicely onto power functions, which Tracy's going to walk us through.
Yeah, so power functions took off, and from 2006 to 2015 kind of dominated a lot of the remote-controlled functions that LEGO brought to the table. With 9 sets in particular, there were 3 passenger, 5 cargo. The Emerald Knight came out, as well as a deluxe train superset. The power functions was really fun in the sense that it got you to put a battery box into your locomotive, and you could change out different motor sizes. So motorizing your trains got a lot more versatile. However, with the IR receiver, sometimes it's hard to keep that connection if you cover everything up, especially over the sensor. So with all these things, they started to be phased out at the end of 2015 in favor of moving in a more modern era. Using apps and Bluetooth, they made the transition to what's the new remote control powered up functions.
Hey, thanks, Trace. We have Andrew Harvey covering Powered Up for us.
Yeah, so as Trace just mentioned, the power function system was getting on a bit. So in 2018, they launched the new Powered Up system with 2 new train sets. And the power functions was using infrared, whereas for the first time, the Powered Up system is using Bluetooth to control the trains. And it consists of a hub that you put the batteries in, but it also has all the electronics for the Bluetooth. And you connect that up to a similar motor to you'd find in the power functions system.
Okay, so we've had a bit of an overview there of each of the power systems that LEGO has produced over the years for powering train sets. I think we can move to an open discussion between members about which their favourites might be and things like that. So let's open it up to the floor, and we'll start with Jonathan because he did the first section. You're probably quite biased, given that you are probably our biggest 12-volt fan. But what's your favourite power system and why? What do you like about it?
My favourite power system is obviously the 12-volt system, purely on the basis that there hasn't been a system since 1989 that had so many accessories that actually use the 12-volt system. So there hasn't been since remote controlled points, remote controlled signals, remote controlled level crossings, and even a decoupler. So the range of accessories just purely wins over for me on the 12-volt system.
They are superb in the 12-volt era, and I think that's what the 9-volt trains are missing, is all of those little accessories which make what is basically a circular track that you get in a set. They make it a lot more fun all of a sudden. What do other people think?
Well, the 9-volt had like the lights, and then it also had the oh man, what was the brick? But it had individual accessories that applied to the specific locomotive rather than accentuate the full track and light.
Anybody else? Chris is unusually quiet.
I know nothing about the volt 4.5 and 12, so
Doesn't usually stop you speaking though.
I can talk over you if you like.
I will say, as a kid, having the 9-volt controller where it just had that very marginalized speed dial on it to go forward and backwards, really simple to understand and really fun to utilize for your first kind of remote controlled electric playset.
Yeah, they were really nice, and a lot of them are still working. You see a lot of them on GBCs, the great ball contraptions, powering the motors that send the balls around through the various widgets. But they last well, as you'd probably expect from most Lego things. They're built fairly well, and they're built to last.
Yeah, and I mean, you can be really ingenuitive with it too. If you use the copper filament over the top of just regular plastic tracks that you can get today, anything can be converted into a 9-volt track.
True, I've seen people do larger radius curves in 9-volt and all sorts of things. I'm not sure I have the patience personally to do it, but I'm sure I could find a willing volunteer in the group if I ever wanted to.
Speaking of someone who hasn't been to an exhibition with trains, what do you guys typically use?
We use a mix. So our main layout is effectively power functions and powered up locos. We also have what we call the playout, which is a drive your own Lego train display, and that runs from 9-volt back. Although Aaron, our resident electrical engineer, has customized that a little bit and wired up Scare Electric's controllers. So kids at Lego shows basically just hold down the controller and the train drives around the loop. So it's kind of a foolproof system. That's great fun as well. I think visitors always like that one.
Does it come with a 7-year-old sister who can pick up the locos off the floor?
That's what William's for. Okay, we'll move on to McGuinness now because he hasn't had a chance to speak really. So, do you have a favourite era of Lego train sets and Lego power systems?
Well, seeing as I've only just got into them, I'd say Powered Up. I mean, it is expensive, but then it hasn't been out for long. But I think it allows you to build more freely because you don't have to worry about leaving room for the IR receiver like in Power Functions, and so you can have a full roof and cover it all up. And I think it's easier to control because obviously Bluetooth, instead of having to directly point the controller at the loco, you can just be anywhere in the room and just press a button and it'll stop whatever. And I just think it allows more freedom. I think it'll be easier for kids, especially.
Definitely, I think that's one improvement. I'm not a huge fan of Powered Up yet. Anyway, I might be convinced, but I think the improved range is definitely better for particularly for playing at Lego shows, railway shows. It's a range. Had a mix of Power Functions and Powered Up locos on our display at the Brickish weekend in Leicester just before the lockdown came into force. And the Power Functions, we had an 18-foot long layout, and the Power Function wouldn't reach from one end to the other because we were in quite a big exhibition hall, whereas the Powered Up had no problem with that. So that's definitely a benefit. Lewis, while you're still with us for the next 10 minutes or so, would you like to
Yeah,
your favourite power type?
I've only ever had experience with Power Functions. I'm yet to actually try any of the others. I think, to be fair, Powered Up does seem to be a good modern compromise. I think I'm yet to try it, but my only concern with Powered Up is the variety at the moment. So, like, my P2 that I've just done uses motors, not the train motors, the standard Power Functions motors. And unless I'm mistaken, there's only one of them available for Powered Up.
I was actually going to ask you, Lewis, is it a medium or a large motor that's in there? Because there are different sizes and scales.
They're the middle one. Is that the large? Because they do XL as well, don't they?
Yeah, there's a medium, large, and XL.
Yeah, it's the large ones, 2 of them.
Aces,
Yeah,
do you see any wheel slip, or do you see anything where it's almost too much power behind your locomotive?
I have no idea yet. I've not actually had a chance to run it on a proper layout at the moment. I've got a small loop at home, and it seems to be running okay.
We'll take it. That's good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying Powered Up at some point. But the other concern with that is there's only 2 outputs. Whereas what I quite like about Power Functions is you can stack as many outputs as you want. It lessens the strength of each one, but I've got 3 motors coming out for my P2, so I couldn't do that with Powered Up.
I think that is one of the biggest limitations of the newer Powered Up system is, as you say, the design of the connectors. You can't stack them at all, so you're limited to 1 motor per port and only 2 motor ports for that basic hub.
I think that's a compromise that you have to work around because obviously with only 2 power ports you can't fit as much, but then you don't have to worry about the space like in the roof because obviously with Power Functions you have to put it on top, whereas Powered Up just straight into the side.
I mean, the most involved thing that I've done like that is probably my class 24, in which I think that's got about 6 different outputs stacked. And so something like that would be an absolute nightmare to do.
It would require a lot of battery boxes.
I'm sure they'll go into the Apple era soon and you'll be able to get dongles for them, but...
Would it be almost a hot take to say that maybe the motors are situational, where using the powered up for like an attic layout or something that's small scale is beneficial just because it's only two components, but then when you're going to a big exhibition, having the power functions there and having the accessibility of all those different channels would be better?
Potentially, yeah. I think it depends. I mean, even the power functions only has 8 channels. It's got blue and red 1 to 4, and we still in LNUR particularly organised on that front. So we still have locos that clash on channels and need changing halfway through shows to stop slowing the wrong loco down on the corner or whatever. I don't know how many channels the powered up's limited to actually, because they're all color based. Not doesn't.
It's 5.
Yeah, 5 rings bell for me as well.
I think the max I've ever done is I've connected 3 individual battery boxes to one channel set, and it really wasn't that bad. I will say, however, sometimes it glitches out, and sometimes it'll just go one consistent speed, and you can't control it, you can't stop it, and at that point, you got to take the batteries out and reset.
It's been a little bit glitchy. I've only used the powered up in the Lego train, the passenger train sets it's come in, and I did find it a bit glitchy in the battery box. Does seem to like to cut out, and I think the life in the battery box of the powered up trains is probably poorer because it's got the Bluetooth signal using, I presume, a reasonable amount of power.
I agree with that 100%. I can't go above maybe like 3, clicks? I can't go up 3 individual button presses to increase my speed without the motor overheating, and then it gives you that blinking yellow light of just like, hey, I'm going out, best of luck. So there was
That's a bit strange. I've been running my powered up train, and I can run it full speed for quite a while, and I haven't had any particular problems with it cutting out or glitching.
Can't imagine Jonathan has any issues on the 12-volt layout. They seem to run without any issues.
They do get warm, but you just swap them out every 20 minutes or so. I've got a reasonable supply of spare motors floating around at shows, so I can run all day, no problems at all. Don't have to change any batteries.
So is powered up on AAAs, or is it rechargeable then?
So at the moment, there's no rechargeable battery available for powered up, which is probably one of the biggest drawbacks of it. The basic hub uses AAAs, but there is also another hub, which is kind of known as the Technic hub, which uses AAs. It's a bit of a bigger unit, and it also has the 4 ports rather than 2. But you're still reliant on having to remove the battery box to change the batteries, even if you use rechargeable AAs or AAAs.
Because that's the biggest thing I've noticed with... I mean, I've only got one rechargeable power functions battery box, and trying to build it so you can remove it is quite a task.
Yeah, no, I mean, the battery box is essentially a comet. It burns bright, or it goes fairly well and relatively smooth as soon as the new batteries are in. But I can only get about a day of life out of them if I'm running it for at least 6 hours.
Yeah.
I found with the power functions that works really well on my underground trains. I think the problem you guys are having is you have these ridiculous above ground trains. I mean, above ground trains, that's such old fashioned 1800s. What were the times, guys? Go underground.
I'm pretty sure the underground was 1800s as well.
Don't give me technicalities.
You're just a womble.
I'm 1.3, whereas you guys are changing your batteries and I'm not.
So what is the consensus? What would you rather use at home, and what would you rather use at a show? I think a good place to start as the next. So we'll go top down again. So Jonathan, is up first.
I use
answer.
I use 12 volt both at home and at shows because basically I don't have any other newer systems. So although I did have some 9 volt not so long ago, I jettisoned that on eBay to stick with the 12 volt. So 12 volt all the way for me.
Ben?
Probably powered up and power functions both at shows and at home just to get that variety.
Thanks. I think my home layout uses 9-volt track because I had a little bit as a childhood Lego fan, and as an adult I bought more and more. So that works quite well at home for me. But at shows, I'd much rather have more functions. I'm not hugely keen on powered up, although I do like the extended range they have for controlling trains, which is really handy in large exhibition halls and railway museums and the weird venues we tend to do exhibitions. Lewis?
I've only ever displayed once with power functions and didn't see any issues with that. So for me, I'm set on power functions for now. I'm sure that will change as I display more and start seeing the issues.
A lot of love for power functions and powered up so far. Matt, you're up next.
Ooh, I'm actually a mix. I'm actually using 9-volt for the electric locos and electric stock and buildings such as the steeple cab, but I'm actually using powered up components along with some of the Lego aftermarket ones for my steam and diesel locos.
Okay. Mr. Miller.
Now then, as I was saying, Power Up works really well for underground trains. Purely because my underground trains are limited in their width and height. And I've found that the F ones, obviously they have the receiver and take up more room.
There's less to hide.
Struggle to get all of it to fit in.
How do you find the battery life on the powered up? I guess your locos aren't particularly heavy, are they?
To be honest, I've probably got the lightest of all the trains we have. In fact, if we just had the single loco just on its own, it's probably lightest of all our locos.
Are we including either in that?
No. Basically, I find if I put brand new batteries in at a show, I could probably use lots of batteries over 2 days. That's plenty per train.
That's not too bad in the scheme of trains. I know locos go through a lot more than that on our layout.
Yeah, the power up for the underground things and PFs for the Gronks that I've built.
It's probably also worth mentioning that powered up might be good for underground trains because of the fact that they're underground, which means you don't have to worry about the infrared signal getting to them.
See, I do make sense with what I say. Underground
when someone filters it for you.
Andrew, you're up next.
So for the longest time, I've been exhibiting with 9 volts, and to me, 9 volts is always going to be king, simply because you can run the trains as long as you want without having to worry about changing batteries. And 9 volts motors in general are a lot easier to incorporate into any train rather than having to worry about fitting in your battery or your receiver, depending on which system you're using. So I think 9 volts is always going to still be the main one I use. However, over the last couple of years, the possibilities of both power functions and powered up have got me intrigued, and I think I'm going to try and use them a little bit more, particularly if you're trying to, say, build a small little shunter loco like a Gronk. If you want to use the 9 volt, you're pretty much stuck with that basic bogie design, whereas with powered up or power functions, you can start designing your own motor and gearing system so that the wheels can be whatever layout you want. So a bit of a mix for me, but in general, mostly 9 volt.
Thanks. And Trace, you're up last for this one.
It pains me to say it, but I think I got to piggyback off of Miller. Powered up seems to be the way to go for me. Just the fact that it's only the wheelbase and the battery box. Those two components makes it easy to kind of switch things around with my different builds that I have, just because I really don't want to invest in buying more battery boxes right now. So I'll say the powered up for the versatility of it, but I do have a special place for the power functions.
And no one showing love for radio control.
I love radio control. I've always said for the last 40 minutes so that radio control is the best.
Yes.
I just point out that with the 9-volt stuff, running off of an electric rail. Who'd have thought that would be a good idea?
Double O gauge for the last 50 years or something.
The best
got 'em.
trains run on electric rails. I mean, wow,
I think that's probably about all we've got on the power systems. So we'll move on. We've still got a interview with about one of his wagons, which we'll move on to next. And after that, we've got a quick section on Andrew Harvey's Black 5 Lego locomotive and some of the latest Lego train news as well to discuss. So Trace, we'll move on to you and your wagons. You want to tell us a little bit about them? And I'm going to try and describe them myself because I've seen them on Instagram, but it's probably easier if you do.
Yeah, no thanks. So the wagons are more or less based on 7-plank wagons, and they're a technique that I got from a man named Scott Nick, who I saw on Flickr. Using a lot of brackets and plates, you kind of just construct it so that you still have the steel beams that connect the wooden planks on a natural wagon together. And the neat way about the way he builds it, and that I've kind of been able to reconstruct from a 7-wide to a 6-wide, is the inside of it is completely hollow except for the one bracket that goes across the width of the wagon. So you can just set it on top of a base plate of about 4x12. So you attach your wheels to the bottom of that, and then you can just place and switch out the bodies of the wagons on top of it. So even if you don't want to invest in a ton of wheels, you can save on money by still creating a lot of different fun private owner wagons.
It's quite a nice idea, particularly because Lego are now moved on to a new build design for wagons. I think the first set that came in was the hidden side freight train, wasn't it? They're all plastic wheels and axles in the same casing design or a very similar casing design. What sort of wagon bodies do you have, and what do you swap out? Do you run different wagons for different locomotives you have?
God, I wish I could tell you there was a rhyme and reason to the way I run my wagons, but it's essentially just, oh, that looks nice. That's a complementary color. Let's chuck it on, see what it looks like.
That's rule number 1 of model railways is if it's your layout, you can run whatever you like on it.
Which is a privilege that I take in stride. No, it's really nice to have the variety, and the color contrast is really nice since a lot of my locos and my layout that I have going are very earthy toned. So the dark reds, the kind of industrial grays, and then the weird medium you get brown. They look well and they stand out, and so it helps give the train a different kind of personality and characteristic.
Yeah, a nice mixed freight. For anybody who doesn't already, if you follow Trace on Instagram, he's just Trace Pierce. We'll put a link in the description for the podcast as well. But he puts up some really good videos of his. And there seems to be a new video or new photographs every day, something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, my game plan is I don't want to overload people who follow me with just random spam and guff, and so I try to at least update 3 times a week. And with those updates, I'll include photos of what's happened or what's been improved, and then at least some sort of video to kind of showcase how it operates and how it runs on my layout, because some of them are a little janky and I know I got to fix them. But it's nice to get critical feedback and immediate response from people. It's a good medium.
Yeah, it is. It's I was a bit skeptical when I first joined Instagram because it's basically just pretty photos, but as a Lego fan, I suppose that's kind of what I want. I just want to look at nice Lego models. Again, the same on the LNUR account that we started. That was a couple of months ago. We've had some really good responses from people around the world on there.
No, I mean, I'm really glad that you finally got LNUR on Instagram. I see it as the best of both worlds with Flickr and Facebook, where since it's more mobile friendly, you can upload photos to it, and then you get the immediate comments and feedback, and you can answer in response there, and you can start to build communities, which is exactly what I think the LNUR is good at.
Hopefully so. Great, thanks, Trace, and we'll definitely put some links up in the description for the podcast on the website and on the YouTube video as well. Up next, we've got Andrew Harvey back to talk about his LMS Black 5.
Yes, so this is a model which I first built way back in 2007, so the dark ages of, I don't know, early lugs and exhibiting. So the first version I made of this, actually I should probably talk a bit about what it is actually to start with. Black 5, as it's known, it's a steam loco built by the LMS, the London, Midlands and Scottish Railway, and then British Railway also built more of them when they took over. It's a very common design. It's mixed traffic, so it will be used to haul both freight and passenger. There was over 800 of them were built, so there's tons of them around, and there's about 18 of them preserved now. So they're very useful engines. So they're called Black Fives, I think, just because literally all of them were just painted black because that was easy. That would do. And when I was looking at new models I wanted to build, Black 5 seemed like a nice, easy choice. Quite an iconic loco, something good to add to my fleet. So I initially designed it in Lego Digital Designer, and bearing in mind this is 2007, the program was still quite primitive at that time. Like you couldn't even pick any color for each part. There was only limited amounts of parts available in each color. I kind of worked around it, used a bit of my own sort of manual designing as well as that, and ordered all the bits. Being 2007 also, you didn't have the wide range of parts like all of the curved slopes you have nowadays, so it looked quite blocky at the time. And that was sort of one of the first locos I took to exhibitions, 2008, 2009, when I first joined my first lug, which was the Brickish Association. At the time, Big Ben bricks were a relatively new thing as well, so I had the Big Ben bricks large wheels, which looked a little bit small for the Black 5 at the time. And then a few years later, Big Ben bricks came out with their brand new extra large wheels, and I was like, oh, they'd work quite well for my Black 5. So I thought, right, I'm gonna modify my design so that the extra large wheels fit. But unfortunately, I did a bit of a botch job with that, and I ended up with the loco looking a bit weird and strange. All the proportions were a bit off. And I remember at the time, one of the builders which I most respected was Carl Greatrix, and I remember him giving me a particular bit of feedback, saying he didn't think my Black 5 in its new guise looked very good. So I thought, right, I need to fix this somehow. So in the end, I then decided I'm going to rebuild the whole thing from scratch. This is about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago now, maybe a bit more. So I've now got a brand new Black 5 model, and that's the one that I've been exhibiting with since. It's using more curved parts because they were now becoming more available. It's using the extra large wheels, of course, and I did a bit more fancy lining work with snot techniques and all that. So there you go.
It does look really impressive, and there's a photo of that in the engine shed section of the LNUR website for anybody who wants to have a look, and I'm sure we'll put a photo in the YouTube video as well. Yeah, thanks, Andrew. That's great. We're moving on to news now. So I think one news as a Lego Train fan podcast that we should definitely cover is some latest announcements from Lego themselves on upgrades to the powered up system, which have come out in the past week or so. And I think actually back to Andrew to cover that again.
Yeah, so Matt posted it that there's someone posted in the Eurobricks forum that there's 3 new set items announced, which is a new powered up hub and 2 motors. But I think what it actually is these are already parts that have been available in other kits, but the new announcements are just the fact that these parts are going to be made available as separate items on the store. So I don't think they're actually new parts, although I might be wrong. So one of the most interesting ones is the hub, which is AA batteries, and it's got 4 motor ports on it, and that's actually, you can get it in some Technic sets, and it's called they call it the Control Plus system, and it's a bit confusing actually how Control Plus and Powered Up work with each other and how they're kept separate. I think they use different phone apps for controlling it, but otherwise I don't really know. And then there's the large motor and extra large motor. I think they're also available in some Technic sets. But it looks like hopefully they'll work with the powered up system and become available.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. I think that was a good overview for everybody. Does anybody else have any Lego news or Lego train news from the week? It's only been about a week since we recorded the last podcast, so not much has popped up, really.
I have some Lego news, train related.
Had a surprise news slot for us. Go on then.
As you may know from the last podcast, I mentioned a Berlin subway train with 42 followers. Well, it's jumped. There's now 51 supporters and 39 days left. Watch this space.
Ooh.
Maybe we need an update every episode on that.
I'm on
I
it.
don't know. Anyone who is listening, I think, is tuned out at this point.
Yeah, quite like
Cruel yank you.
it.
It's the tag at the end of the entire podcast. Everyone says their outros, music plays, and then oh, and guess what about the underground? Oh,
That sounds like it.
Maybe we should do that.
Yeah.
That's all from LNUR Line this time. Join us in our next podcast for a discussion about Lego landscaping and scaling. So goodbye from us all.
Goodbye.
bye.
So yeah.
Bye.
Bye. So well. Auf Wiedersehen. Goodbye.